as we welcome in the host of the Locked On Kings podcast, our good friend of ABC 10, one Matthew George. Matt,
Hello.
What's happening, buddy?
Hey.
What up? I was having a good day until Mark Stein tweeted something out about 25 minutes ago. So now I'm just having an average day, but I'm back with you guys, so it's getting good.
Explain to me why that's bad, and I'll read the tweet for everybody here as soon as it loads. Okay, Mark Jackson has impressed Kings owner Vivek Ranadive in the interview process to date and appears to have his best shot at an NBA coaching job since the Golden State Warriors ousted him 8 years ago. Why does that bother you so much?
Well, number one, this actually doesn't bother me, but it also doesn't surprise me. Like, we knew Vivek was going to be involved in the interviews every step of the way. He was involved in all the interviews for hiring the general manager. Like, that's no surprise whatsoever. So it's not that Vivek has an opinion. It's the fact that I'm hearing about Vivek's opinion and I'm not hearing about Monte McNair's opinion. And to me, it's the fact that, like, what did everybody think, or a lot of people thought, a lot of Kings fans who have been following the Kings over the last 9 years since Vivek took over, when they saw both Mike Brown and Mark Jackson, but especially Mark Jackson on this finalist list, they said, oh, here we go again. It's the continuation of a pattern. Once again, the Sacramento Kings are trying to be like the Golden State Warriors, which is what Vivek has made his MO since he became the owner of the Sacramento Kings. And I tried to not necessarily play it off, but the way that I felt kind of before today was that, look, we've asked Monte McNair in person and over Zoom time and time again, like, Monty, do you have full autonomy? Is this your team? Are you making the decisions? And Monty has looked us in the eye every single time, and he has told us, I have full autonomy. This is my team. I'm the guy here. I'm making the decisions. Now, I don't necessarily expect him to take a mic and say, no, I'm just a figurehead here. I'm just a puppet, and guys upstairs are making the decisions. So you have to kind of take that with a grain of salt. But then we started to see little things like the Doug Christie or Alvin Gentry over Doug Christie decision and things like that, like little things that suggested, okay, maybe this really is McNair's group. And then this finalist list comes out. And like I said earlier, it just, you see the continuation of a pattern. And as much as I want to dismiss it as, no, this is all on Monty, this is completely Monty's decision, no matter what, this falls onto Monty's shoulders. To see those names, to have that little red flag maybe raised to half-mast, and then you get this tweet from Mark Stein saying, not McNair, not Wes Wilcox, not anybody else that's actually a basketball decision maker, Kings owner Vivek Ranadive is impressed by Mark Jackson, and suddenly he has his best chance in 8 years of getting a job. I don't want to hear about Vivek Ranadive anymore. I want to hear about Monte McNair making this decision. And the fact that McNair's name is nowhere to be seen, that concerns me a whole hell of a lot. That is sending alarm bells off in my head.
That's understandable. I get it. Absolutely. What you can kind of hope for in that situation is, well, the only thing that you really hope for in that situation is that Mark Jackson or whoever, Mike Brown, they win. They win. Because if they win, all this will go away.
Absolutely.
You know, we won't think about it. We'll talk about him trying to be like the Warriors, but this time he actually got it right, this time. So I understand your concerns with that, though. I do. I get it. You'd rather hear Monty McNair's name heading up the search. We don't know that he's not, but you'd rather hear that as well. And you hear Vivek again. Seems like they're skipping a step, right? Like it should be he's impressed Monty McNair, and now he's got to, talk to the big boss, talk to Vivek, and really get his ear. That's how you like to hand it. So I like to hear it. I understand what you're talking about.
And I want to be clear too, Kenny, it's not that I don't see any value in Mark Jackson potentially being the head coach of the Kings. Like if you look back to what he did with the Golden State Warriors, got them to buy into kind of a defensive mindset, brought that team from terrible to 2 really good seasons and laid part of the foundation of what became that Warriors dynasty. Like I understand from a basketball standpoint what Mark Jackson brings and why he could potentially be successful in Sacramento. Honestly, his stock wasn't too high with me to begin with because of the drama and the baggage that he also brings that I'm just not necessarily interested in at this point in time. This stock went down as soon as I saw Vivek Ranadive's name attached to him. And that has nothing to do with Jackson. That has everything to do with Vivek, because Vivek has continued to, and ownership has continued to kind of, I think the word that we've heard is meddle, kind of be involved instill their opinions instead of listening to the basketball decision makers. Again, I don't know 100% if this is fully Vivek's decision or McNair's decision, but the fact that once again it can be questioned, that is my issue. So I'm trying to be fair here and not say McNair's completely out. This is Vivek's hire at this point, because I think that's an overreaction. But with Vivek's name once again being brought up, those concerns are back up as well.
To be fair, Vivek like Mike Malone.
He got that way right and then botched it. Well, not him, but we know what happened.
So I think we get overly sensitive about Vivek Ranadive.
Okay.
And I don't know. Obviously I have no idea. I'm going to guess it wasn't Vivek that called Mark Stein and said, "Hey, I'm really digging Mark Jackson." Someone either involved in the process or someone who has heard something about the process has relayed that information to Mark Stein. Someone said that there's enough out there to where James said to us on Friday, there's a lot of traction around Mark Jackson being the Kings' next head coach. I don't think that's just Vivek. I don't think Monty's in there screaming, no, don't do this. And Vivek's like, oh yeah, this is my team. I'm doing it. I would hope they're having discussions about how this is going. And a piece of that discussion was obviously relayed to Mark Stein.
Yeah, I don't think it's as extreme as McNair saying absolutely not and Vivek overruling him. I think that would be absurd to really consider that. I don't think that necessarily happens. Again, it just goes back to the name that we're seeing, the name that is being thrown out publicly versus the name that I think all Sacramento Kings fans want to be thrown out publicly with this decision, which is Monty McNair. Even if the Luke Walton situation, right? We all heard Monty McNair is bringing Walton back. This is Monty McNair's guy. There was still skepticism about whether or not it was Monty's decision or not. Regardless, we can dismiss all that because Monty committed to him, ended up firing him 20 games later. To me, that's on McNair, even if there was something behind the scenes that influenced that. To me, that's on Monty.
Agreed.
Like at that point, it's Monty's decision. I want this hire, no matter who it is, even if I 100% hate it and disagree with it. I want it to be Monty McNair's decision without question. And already, not only is this moving a lot faster than I expected to, we already have a finalist list and the season ended 3 or something weeks ago. Like, not only that, now we have Vivek's name being brought up again, ownership names being brought up again, not general manager names. That freaks me out. That worries me from a Kings fan perspective.
Is there anybody, we'll take all the candidates, not just the finalists. Was there somebody that you had your eye on particularly that you thought would be good for the job from everything that you've heard and read?
Well, he wasn't on the list of initial candidates, but I've always been a fan of Kenny Atkinson. I like the idea of Kenny Atkinson. I think it's telling. The only, I guess, thing we've heard about Kenny is Sam Amick suggested that maybe he wasn't interested in the job to begin with. That was never confirmed.
Can you stick with that for a second? That's exactly what he did, because there are some people who are really, really bad at their jobs who said something otherwise. Mm-hmm. He suggested it. He didn't report it.
Correct.
He suggested it. And those are two very, very different things. James Ham, a reporter, said that's not exactly what happened. And again, I'm not trying to be vague here. I can't remember what James said on the air and what he said off the air. I'll ask him when he joins us at 3 if he can clarify that on the air. And if he can, great. If he can't, that's really important. Sam Amick suggested that Kenny Atkinson may have turned them down.
Regardless, Kenny's not part of that list, and that was a bit disappointing to me, especially when clearly, or I guess based off of what we know, based off this finalist list, it seems like McNair is trending towards guys who have former head coach experience. If you were to say before this list came out, hey, the Kings are going to hire a former NBA head coach who's available right now, who's towards the top of your list, I would have said Kenny Atkinson is like number 1 or number 2 potentially. He's not.
Can I ask you something? Why?
Yeah.
A lot of people loved Kenny Atkinson, and
I was thinking about that too. Like what, and this actually made me more pro Mike Brown, is I was thinking like, what was it about Kenny Atkinson that I like so much that I'm kind of hesitant about with Mike Brown? And it again brought me a little more over, and even Steve Clifford to some extent, hell, even Mark Jackson to some extent. Like I saw what Kenny Atkinson did, and a lot of it's recency bias too. Like I saw what he was able to do with the Brooklyn Nets, how well that team was playing, the young team, and what they became. And then of course we all know what happened. But I just, and reading about Kenny's past as a development coach, or how he's developed young talent, I think I was intrigued by that. And I think it was more a romanticized idea than it was like a legitimate day one Kenny Atkinson is coming in and changing the organization. If I think about that compared to a guy like Mike Brown, I could see Mike Brown or Mark Jackson having more of a day one impact than Kenny Atkinson would have. So other than that, like the list of first timers like Darvin Ham, I know infatuated a lot of Kings fans on social media. The fact that like first time head coaches now, guys, they don't seem to be that big of risks anymore. Like I remember a first time head coach not too long ago. It's like, do you really want to try this guy, whether he's out of college or he's come up through the NBA ranks? Now it's like, look at the first time NBA head coaches. You guys were talking about both Ime Udoka and Willie Green recently. Like, look at these first time head coaches who are having success, but it's not just, they're just getting plucked and thrown on a bench and said, here you go. Like they've paid their dues. Darvin Ham, I had Jill Adge on Locked On Kings not too long ago, and I just sat back for 20 minutes and listened to her talk about these young candidates and how they've come up through the business and the names they've been connected to. Like, I would have liked to have seen at least one of those names on the finalists, on that finalist list, you know, but I don't know any of these guys personally. I'm not there in the interviews, so I can't fully attach myself to any one candidate. I just was a bit underwhelmed, as I think a lot of people were, by the list of final three that initially came out so soon.
At a point, I got to do two things here, Casey, before you jump in there.
Absolutely.
Well, I've been dying to mention this for a few days. Chris Finch is often referenced in those names of, you know, first year head coach. Chris Finch is 52 years old. I just want to point that he's not a 33-year-old kid who's been, you know, working his way through. He's 52 years old. He's been in the game a minute.
Isn't Darvin Ham like only 2 years younger than Mike Brown too? So like these guys aren't.
That would make Darvin Ham 50.
Yeah, pretty sure.
Mike Brown's 52.
Darvin Ham, he can't be 50.
I don't know.
Maybe he is. I don't know.
48. So he's 4 years younger.
Yeah. A little older than even I thought. Wow.
Also, with all this talk about music festivals and Kenny spending his time at music festivals, we've got your opportunity to pick your music festival, the Golden Sky Festival on October 15th and 16th, or the world famous Aftershock Festival, October 6th to 9th. We've got your tickets for whichever one of those you want. Caller number 3 right now, 916-349-1320. Kenny, of course, he's going to both of those, but you have the opportunity to pick which one you want to go to. 916-349-1320. Our promotions team really knows our demographic here.
Question. I have a question.
Yep.
I've never been to a music festival in my life, and I've always wanted to go to one, but I have no idea which one to go to. Either Chatty House or you guys help me out.
Kenny will tell you.
Go to Lost in Rhythm. You'll love it.
Got it.
Or you can go to Soul Bloom, which was phenomenal this past.
You have to do the podcast the next day wearing glasses because it gets a little, it's a long weekend out there.
Hazy out there. It gets a little hazy. But no, yeah, I don't know. What kind of music you like?
Well, I do know Aftershock's not my vibe. I do know that I would not be happy with Aftershock, but like I've been interested in Bottle Rock before. And then like these are massive ones, but like I'm an EDM fan, so like Tomorrowland and stuff like that they do, but those are huge international things. So I don't know if that's I'm ready for that, but I don't know. I'm interested. Stagecoach looked a little interesting too. I don't know. I'm in.
Okay. Did you say you've been to Bottle Rock?
No, I've been intrigued by Bottle Rock.
Oh, I was like, well, Matt George been to Bottle Rock. I ain't been there yet. I think Stevie.
Are you a Coachella guy, Matt?
Oh yeah, I'd do Coachella. Yeah, I absolutely. I would just go to experience it. I just know the only one that I wouldn't have a very good time at is Aftershock.
What was it? Metallica? Was it last year? They were. I thought long and hard. Like,
oh yeah, it was last year. Yeah,
I could go. I could go and watch that.
That was at Discovery Park too, right?
I did not. Yes.
I had never. Once again, I'd say never. Maybe 1 year, I forgot. Long time, 102.5. Maybe Damien was on stage.
Hey, it's Cinco de Mayo, baby. It's that time of year. Let's go. The big Cinco. Baby Bash, Frankie J. Lisa and the Colt Jam. Come on.
That place is massive. Like, absolutely festival show.
Oh, it's huge.
Kenny, let me tag along with you to Let me tag along with you to a music fest.
Man, pull up with me, man. Like I said, Lost in Rhythm, Soul Bloom. Pull up on me, man.
I'm there.
You know,
Let's go.
Let's go.
I'll carry your drink.
You can see Summer Walker. You know, I think you like Summer Walker, Matt.
Do you know who Summer Walker is?
No.
Okay. You're listening to D-Lo and Casey on ESPN 1320 KIFM West Sacramento, KRXQ HD2 Sacramento and Odyssey Station, and driven by Lasher's Elk Grove Dodge. Matt George, host of the Locked On Kings podcast, and Matt George of ABC 10. They're one and the same with us here, talking Kings basketball, talking these coaching hires. With the remaining three, do you have a preference? I don't.
Yeah. It's Mike Brown at this point. It is
Mike Brown.
Okay. Yeah, it's Mike Brown just based off the pedigree, the fact that, like, I think Kings fans roll their eyes a little bit, and I know I did too. He's another coach that's coming from Steve Kerr's system with the Golden State Warriors, but he spent 6 good years with the Golden State Warriors, and I'd like to imagine that not only has he learned a thing or two, but he's done a lot to help that organization, so I don't view that as a bad thing.
I love that we look at that as a bad thing. Like it's just the winning, like they've been to the finals 5 times, and oh God, we're doing what they're doing. Ugh.
It's that stepbrother jealousy that we got.
That's kind of what it is.
But yeah, it's Mike Brown. Although, like, I could listen to arguments for all three. My number 3 is Mark Jackson, more because of the drama than it is what he can do for the basketball team. And then Steve Clifford, like, I could make an argument for Steve Clifford, but I'm also like, I know you have to walk. Okay, I know you have to walk before you can run, but like, I think Steve Clifford can help this team defensively right away. I don't think he's inspiring necessarily. What concerns me about Clifford is he's been to the playoffs 4 times, all 4 times first round exits. Now, I will raise my hand right up and say I would be thrilled for the Kings to be a first round exit next year. Don't get me wrong. But also, I tweeted this out. Like, I'm looking for the Kings to hire a coach with a little bit of longevity. Like, I'm not trying to see another 3 years and then McNair or whoever's the general manager say, this guy took us as far as he's going to go. Now we need the guy to take us to the next level, a la Vlade Divac with Dave Yeager and Luke Walton. Like, I'm looking for a guy that's going to be here for the next 5-6 years that I don't have to worry about, who's going to get a second contract and then probably have to be in conversations to get a third contract. I don't know if any of these 3 guys are going to get that, which is why I was a little underwhelmed by this list. But overall, like, out of the 3 of them, I could see Mark Jackson and Mike Brown getting second contracts before I could see Steve Clifford getting second contracts. And a lot of that is just based off of his history. So that being said, he doesn't have the drama that Jackson has. So that's why he gives me a slight edge. It's really Mike Brown and then a lot. And then Steve Clifford and Mark Jackson are kind of like right here.
Oh, man. Steve Clifford and Mark Jackson right next to each other. What do you think about what I spoke about earlier when I said Mike Brown and Steve Clifford? Mike Brown a little bit more than Steve Clifford. Those are singles. Those guys are good coaches, good basketball minds. Get you to the playoffs, and hey, I'm the guy that says make it once and then blow it up if you have to. So I'm not sneezing at a playoff appearance. But I don't believe as coaches they have the ceiling that Mark Jackson does. What do you think about that?
I don't think you could have put it better. I think you're absolutely 100% right. Like, I think Mike Brown, what I like about Mike Brown out of the group is that he's safe. Steve Clifford, to some extent, short term, is safe. Mark Jackson is more of a swing for the fences. And last offseason, I was preaching swing for the fences over and over and over again, but I was talking about that from a player personnel standpoint, from an on-the-court guy standpoint. My thing, where I get hung up with Mark Jackson, and maybe you can help me talk through this, because I talked about Kyle with this, and Kyle had some great points as well. Like, Mark Jackson has not had a coaching job, not just head coach. He has not been an assistant coach, period. He's not been on a coaching staff for 8 years. He's been in the broadcast booth. And while I do believe people can absolutely change, and maybe some of the criticisms that he gets for what happened with the front office and Golden State compared to how much that locker room supported him, like, I think sometimes that gets a little overblown and maybe is unfair to him at times. But the Kings have had a revolving door of head coaches for 16 years. I think this is going to be, if you include Alvin Gentry, I think this is going to be head coach number 12 since Adelman was fired. That includes Ty Corbin and Alvin Gentry in there. Do you want to be the team to take a flyer on a guy, to give a guy like Mark Jackson a second chance, when over the last 8 years he has interviewed for multiple different positions and all those teams have said, you know what, we're good? Like, do the Kings really think that they're in the right position at this point in time, with the longest playoff drought in the history of the NBA, to make that swing, to take that risk? I can't justify that, at least in my mind, but I think you're 100% right, Kenny, in saying if we're going off of ceilings, Jackson's is higher than the other two.
I'm trying to think. Did Mark Jackson interview when the Knicks hired Tom Thibodeau?
I don't,
because I'm trying to figure out like who are all these.
It was the coach before that, whoever that was.
Okay,
who was the coach before Thibs?
I'm just trying to figure out who like Mark Jackson is interviewed like with, and if you think Mark Jackson is the coach that turned things around for the King, if you think Mark Jackson is the coach that can turn things around for you, you hire him. Because all of the other stuff you should have already dealt with by now. We're too far along in the process for you to start asking, those questions. You should have asked those questions right out the gate. You should have sat down like an NFL GM would and be like, look, we don't even need to talk about basketball. We need to knock a couple of things out of the way. And if we can get this ironed out, then we can go on to an actual job interview. I think if you think he's the guy, you hire him. For me, my list is like Mike is at the top of my list, and then Mark is right below him, and that's my list.
Poor Steve.
Hey, I'm sure Steve Clifford is a wonderful human being, wonderful man, and I don't mean that in that's just not the guy that I want for this job. I'd rather have Mike Brown more than any of them. And like, if you can convince me Mark Jackson is the guy, and Kenny, I think you've made a million valid points today. If everything else falls into line, cool. Like, let's do it. Like, we all like want the same thing. I'm just not going to compromise my desire for them to win with whatever issues he may have. I'm not going to compromise that. So that's just all I need. That's what I need addressed. From Mark,
for sure.
You best believe the questions will be coming day one too. As soon as introductory press conference, and that might be needed. Like, hey, here's the podium. Let's get this off the table. And the biggest thing working for Jackson, other than the success that he had with the Golden State Warriors, is the fact that despite all the drama attached to him during that time, he had that locker room support, and that team believed in him and they bought in. So they bought into what he was doing, and they bought in defensively, which is exactly what the Kings need to do. And I'd be very interested to see. I asked Kyle about this too on my podcast that's coming out a little bit later today. I'm very interested to see what Jackson could do with Fox and Sabonis, particularly De'Aaron Fox. Like, we know Fox, the talent that he has offensively, we know he can do defensively if he buys in. Does Mark Jackson come in with that mentality? Does he come in with that culture of, y'all need to give 110% on this end as well? How many times last season, guys, were we talking about, man, this team needs a Jimmy Butler, this team needs a Draymond Green, this team needs an enforcer? Kenny, you and I have talked before, like, you don't necessarily need that or expect that to be your head coach. A lot of times it's on the players, but if your head coach comes in and brings that attitude right away, hey, maybe that actually creates some change. So again, I can make arguments for all three, and I like a lot of the arguments for Mark Jackson. I'm still wary of the drama, but you're 100% right, D-Lo. That stuff gets addressed day one, and maybe it's handled day one and put aside.
Yeah.
But drama has not been, we've had no shortage of drama over the last few years in regards to Kings coaches and Kings front office issues. So,
hey, I'm not going to lie to you. It's best for business. It's best for business, man.
Good for podcast content.
Good point. That's a good point. You know what? Hire Mark Jackson. Good point.
I'm trying to figure out like who Mark has interviewed with over the last 8 years. And I am like face planning into a number of articles that I haven't seen before. Like William asked earlier, would he hire Jeff? You think he would hire Jeff Van Gundy? There was an article written in 2020 that said he wanted to hire Jeff Van Gundy when he was with the Warriors. Now, obviously, it's much later now, and the money Jeff Van Gundy is making, and I mentioned Doris Burke earlier, the money that they're making, that ain't the money they're going to make as an assistant coach. Like, assistant coaches don't make what you might. The roles that they're in are more financially rewarding than being an assistant in the NBA. Stumbled across Andre Iguodala saying Mark Jackson has been blackballed. Oh, man, What an interesting figure.
I guess
like a dude who's coached 3 years, and I guess part of it is because he's been on TV. Like he's whatever people's issue with is with Mark Jackson. It's obviously not bad enough for the NBA to go to its main media partner and say, "Hey, this is a problem. You've got to do a 2-man booth, and you got to get Mark out of there."
I don't know if you guys heard it. I guess Steph Curry spoke on Mark Jackson recently on someone's podcast. I think it was Woj's podcast. Or was it Draymond's podcast?
Yeah.
So I haven't heard that yet, but people have been referencing that to me a lot too. So he still has Steph's support.
Steph Curry has been supporting Mark Jackson since the day he left. He said it numerous times, how much credit he gets for some of the things that he was able to do while he was the head coach there. And how he should continue to be a coach. Steph Curry's never wavered on that at all. As a matter of fact, and I've talked to Damian about this before, I remember specifically when Joe Lacob was running around talking to every reporter he can to justify why he was moving on from Mark Jackson and was taking some would deem unnecessary shots at him repeatedly. Steph Curry was the one that kind of, I think he said it in an interview or a tweet or something like that. But Steph Curry was the one like, hey, this needs to stop. Like, he's gone. You got what you wanted. You don't have him here, but you don't need to keep piling on this man. That's not what needs to happen here. And since that moment, Joe Lacob has stopped. But Steph Curry was the first one to be like, hey, man, you got to stop this. It's not cool. Like, it's not necessarily – I didn't feel the same way. We didn't feel the same way about him. You got your own reasonings for feel that way, but just leave it at that. You don't have to keep running his name through the mud.
I'm looking at another line here, and this is from this is Ryan Russillo on his podcast. He says, "I have nothing personal against Mark Jackson. He's one of my favorite college players. But I think the most important part of all of this, when I listen to him on broadcast with Van Gundy, I think it hurts his chances of getting a job. Van Gundy mentions all of these little things that are smart and revealing. It happens multiple times every single broadcast. Jeff Van Gundy is easily the best NBA analyst right now. Mark doesn't do any of those things." And he goes on to say a lot more. He'll say that guy's a great storer. He's a great individual. I'll leave that right there.
Who said that?
This is Ryan Russillo.
Yeah, I thought that's who said that.
I don't think that's Mark's role there. I think that's Jeff's role, and Mark's playing his. Like, you don't have two guys that, like, if that's preventing Mark Jackson from getting a job, that's goofy. Because I don't think that's his job there. That's Jeff Van Gundy's job. That's what Jeff Van Gundy does. Mark adds a little seasoning here and there. Mike Breen handles the play-by-play. Jeff Van Gundy does a bulk of the analytical work or analysis, I should say. And Mark Jackson is there to provide almost like you got a coach's perspective and a player's perspective.
If it was that important, Doris Burke should have a head coaching job by now, right? Like, you would think so, because she's one of the best. I think she's the best analyst out there, but put her on a bench.
Well, watch her name closely if Mark gets the job.
Hey, now the two things that I think about with Mark, where a lot of people, like, I don't know. I don't want to say I don't listen to them, but it seems like it becomes more personal than giving a fair observation of the situation. When you're somebody like Ryan Russillo and he's talking that way about Mark Jackson, like, like, a lot of people seem to talk about Mark Jackson like he's some kind of buffoon. Like, he ain't never been around the game. This is one of the great point guards, assist wise, that we've seen. He grew up in the game. We talk about Will Hardy and all these other guys playing under Popovich and all this other stuff. Look at the coaches Mark Jackson's played under. He's played under two of the greatest to ever do it, and Larry Brown, Jerry Sloan. He works hand in hand with a guy that people respect in Jeff Van Gundy. Like that's where they kind of miss me, where they kind of speak about Mark like he just don't know the game of basketball, and it just be beyond him to comprehend how the game is going today. And that's just is disingenuous, and it's not being fair to the whole situation, in my opinion. The other thing about that is, like I mentioned earlier with Joe Lacob, and he says, you couldn't get along with him. Nobody liked him. Well, that's not true. There are plenty of people that like Mark Jackson. There are plenty of people that like and respect Mark Jackson, the man and the basketball coach. So I don't know why we have to, not us, but just why people in general have to talk in so many crazy extremes when it comes to Mark Jackson. I don't think there's anything wrong with saying he's a good basketball mind. He's a good coach. There's a lot of drama that I don't know I want to deal with, and leave it at that. Like, we don't have to jump out the window and talk about nobody likes him, and he don't know nothing about the new game about. Like, come on, man. Like, I just don't understand it.
I think it's fair to ask, though. I think going so far as to say Mark doesn't know anything about or know anything about the new game of basketball, I think that's a bit silly. But I do think the question, and Matt, you brought this up when we started this conversation, I do think it's fair. And Kenny, we talked about it. I think it's fair to bring up, like, he hasn't coached in 8 years. He hasn't been, like, at all. Mm-hmm. Like, not a head coach. Like, he hasn't been a coach of any sort. He's been an analyst for the last 8 years. And that, to me, that obviously it's not that big of a deal. If he's one of the final 3 candidates, it's obviously not that big of a deal to the Sacramento Kings. But I think it's a fair question. I do think it's a fair question to ask.
But my question was always on the angle of not, hey, with him not being a coach for 8 years, he's lost touch on what the modern NBA basketball. Like, I don't believe that at all. I still think he's a very good basketball mind. To me, it's always been the off the court stuff. And my question has always been, why hasn't he gotten a job for the last 8 years when he does have the basketball side of things are actually on his side? And that, I guess that's where the holdup is to what you're saying. It sounds like the Kings don't necessarily care about. Certainly sounds like Vivek doesn't necessarily care about it. So, like, if you can get past the off court stuff, if you can believe that, and I know people change. I don't think who Mark Jackson was and the issues that he had are just going to completely go away. If the Kings hire Mark Jackson, I expect at some point in time to maybe hear a little thing or two. But if the Kings are winning basketball games, like Kenny said, that stuff goes away. That stuff doesn't matter because you hear clashes and you hear incidents with the Golden State Warriors currently. You hear stuff we saw DeMarcus Cousins fighting with somebody on the Denver Nuggets bench, arguing with somebody on the Denver Nuggets bench during a playoff game. That story was dead in 30 minutes because nobody cared anymore because the Nuggets are still a good basketball team. Like, that stuff goes away. So if Mark Jackson is the hire, I have my concerns. Those are going to be addressed in that introductory press conference. We're going to monitor them over the course of next season. If the Kings start the season 10-5, if the Kings are a 7th, 6th seed and in the playoffs, in an actual playoff series by the time it's said and done, none of this will matter.
Mark Jackson also said Klay Thompson and Steph Curry was going to be the greatest backcourt in NBA history, and everybody laughed at him.
Pretty close.
Pretty close.
I mean,
I'm pretty sure that's it. That's the one. I don't know that there's been a better backcourt ever than those two, or ever will be. And I don't know what that means about Mark Jackson. Like we talk about, everyone remembers the line about, Steph Curry is ruining basketball. I think most people knew exactly what he meant by that.
Steph Curry knows exactly what he meant by that.
But plenty of people chose to, Mark is so stupid. Mark is the same guy who said this is you're looking at the greatest backcourt in NBA history. And he was universally laughed at. Mm-hmm. No one is laughing at that remark anymore. Mm-hmm. So whether we think he knows the current NBA or not, he certainly knew the Golden State Warriors. Mm-hmm. He certainly knew the direction of Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, which you could argue is exactly what this current NBA is. So you've got that, I mean, he knows how to defend it, because now there isn't just a Steph Curry. Now there's a Steph. I don't know if you guys have heard this. There's a Buddy Hield, and he's a flamethrower in Indiana. There's a Trae Young. You know what I mean? There's Dame Lillard. There's logo shooters all over the place. Like there are things that are a little bit different than when you last coached. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I don't know if he's seen a Sacramento Kings game in the last 8 years.
I wouldn't blame him.
Broadcasting one.
I was going to say, he ain't had to call one. So
how does he get so lucky?
Okay, he works on national television, so he doesn't have to worry about seeing the Sacramento Kings. His agent had to remind him, no, Sacramento, no, they want to talk to you. They're still in the league. What do you mean?
Where's Sacramento? Where the hell is that?
So, yeah, Mark, I think he'd be a good basketball candidate. There obviously, I'm not breaking any news. There's negatives and potential negatives to hiring Mark Jackson. One of the things I think about as well as a potential negative is we hear about how he motivates guys and all this other stuff. That worked the first time around when you were brand new. Has so much gone on since that previous job where now you start that same type of motivational speak and people look at you like a clown. Like, what do you, it doesn't have the same effect. Like you telling me to do, like you guys mentioned earlier, you trying to tell me to do something and stay focused on my job. And here you are, having run-ins with the front office or, whatever you're doing in your personal life. So the things that really get highlighted about his time with the Warriors, as far as motivating guys and instilling confidence, so much has gone on in that time. It could have I don't want to say a negative effect, but no effect at all because of everything that we've known about him since then. That's also something that you got to think about as well, and not think that it's just going to carry over because that's just who he is.
I guess the last thing that I'll say on Mark Jackson is, regardless, like, I will always have my concerns with what happened with Jackson off the court, especially if he were to become the next head coach of the Sacramento Kings. And Monte McNair would be catching some heat had Stein's tweet said he's impressed Monte McNair and has his best chance. I am still, like we talked about at the very beginning, still struggling to see Vivek's name there and not McNair's name there. I would be feeling a whole hell of a lot better today about a Mark Jackson hire if it was Monte McNair is impressed with Jackson. And that may be the case. I just wish it was reported that way instead of the way that it was with Vivek's name in there. That's my thing. That's where I'm at.
Yeah.
Well, I know who you want it to be. I think by the next time we talk to you, we'll know. Who do you think it's going to be?
All the narratives in my brain say it's going to be Mark Jackson, but I think it's a two-man race. Like you said, I don't think I think Clifford's a finalist. I would be shocked if Clifford got the job. I honestly would be shocked if Clifford got the job. I think it's a two-man race.
I'm checking the YouTube poll results for the first time, and the question obviously is who do you want to be the next Kings head coach? 69% say Mike Brown. 24% say Mark Jackson. Sacramento is not feeling Steve Clifford at all.
Oh, come on, Steve.
Just not.
Does he have a percentage at all? I can't even do the math. What was it? 1%?
7% for Steve Clifford.
Hey, let Mark Jackson, or I'm sorry, let Mike Brown get the job and bring Steve with him as a lead assistant. Let's do that.
That's too much defense. Let's hire Mike Brown.
No scoring.
Let's get I don't know who an offensive mind is out there. Shoot, you talk about guys never getting a job. What the hell is Elston Turner doing right now? Bring him back here to work with Mike Brown. He knows how to run an offense. You talk about guys, people, kids these days talk about Sam Cassell, and Elston Turner never got a head job anywhere. Man, that's crazy to me.
Hey, man.
He's a cool dude. I miss
him. Oh, he's the best.
Courtside talks with Elston Turner before games, man. Nothing better.
He's the absolute best. Bring him back. Mike Brown, Elston Turner. I'm all for it. I just thought of that right now. Let's do that.
Poor Steve.
No, Steve will be fine. Steve can go. He can go consult sideline Steve in Brooklyn, and he'll be fine.
Sideline Steve. Oh boy, Coach Bud. He showed sideline Steve how to coach this weekend.
Man,
other ways to get your guy going? Oh, I didn't know. Other ways are some good looks. I didn't know. There's just this suffocating Boston Celtics defense.
All right, all right.
It's just we don't know what to do. No, okay, Coach Bud at that end.
By the way, can we? We haven't talked about them all day. Can we give credit to the Bucks defense?
Oh yeah,
man, that Bucks defense, like they look like the Celtics defense out there. They was trying to.
They made Jaylen Brown look silly, and I love Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown looked lost,
and I think that's the last time they're going to do that. But Ime Udoka's he's in for a fight. They've got some things that they got to work on their end. Matt George, new podcast drops later on today. Locked on Kings podcast. Matt, we appreciate you as always, my friend.